All right, so this video is all about eating enough protein. So this whole practice is about getting the right nutrients for your body and the correct amount of nutrients for your body. So diving into protein today, the whole goal of this practice is to get in 1 to 2 palm sizes of protein per meal. Yep, you heard me, palm. So we're talking about the palm of your hand. So the size of the palm of your hand is going to be unique to you, and that's going to be fairly accurate for the amount of protein that your body needs. So aim for 1 to 2 palms of protein throughout the day at every meal you eat. So what this is doing is this is balancing our external guidelines with internal guidelines. And external is some sort of measurement, right? And it's common to, you've already heard of measuring grams or measuring ounces, but we're going to use hand portions. It's a lot easier because you always have your hand with you, and it's fairly equivalent to the amount of grams that you need. So that is more external cueing. Internal cueing is what your body is telling you. Are you hungry? Are you full? Are you 50% full? Are you 80% full? The only thing is, internal cueing is a little bit harder to read if you've never practiced it before. So we're using external cueing like the palm of your hand to help bridge the gap of learning how much food you need. So let's talk about what is protein and what it does in the body. I'm sure if you've ever talked to any fitness professional or seen anybody on the internet, they've probably said, you need more protein. You need more protein. And so you add more protein in, and then you wonder, what is this actually doing for me? So proteins are broken down into something called amino acids. And those amino acids kind of bond together to do different jobs throughout the body. And a good analogy that I think of is an amino acid is very similar to a brick, okay? And a brick can be used for all sorts of structures, right? You can use bricks to build a house. You can use bricks to build a school. You can use bricks to build a specific type of road. And there's different types of bricks. Amino acids are very similar in the body. There's different types of amino acids, and they can be combined to build and repair different structures within the body. So the amino acid is just the farthest breakdown of a protein. If you take a full protein and you break it down, and you break it down, and you break it down, the very, very bottom is amino acid. Now there are essential amino acids and non-essential amino acids. I'm not going to name all of them off. There's a huge list for both of them. But simply put, a non-essential amino acid is something that your body will naturally make. An essential amino acid is something that you have to eat and consume so your body can have it to build those structures within your body. Now we could go into all the names of essential amino acids, and you could look into, all of them and what foods provide them, but as long as you're focusing on getting in protein at every single meal, especially 1 to 2 palmfuls, you're most likely going to hit the mark of all the essential amino acids that you need. So once you eat them, consume them, they're digested, what do they do in the body? So protein has a lot of different roles, and I'm going to read off just a few of them. So the main one is they help with growth, and they help repair damaged cells. So a huge theme in the fitness industry is to eat enough protein if you're exercising. And that makes sense, right? Because when you're exercising, you get little tiny micro tears in your muscles. So you need protein to help rebuild them as you get stronger. So with that said, from a larger picture, if proteins are very essential in rebuilding damaged cells and growing healthy cells, in turn, that will help your immunity get much stronger. Right? If you have a low immunity, chances are you have a lot of unhealthy cells. But if you eat more protein, and along with other healthy practices for, improving your immunity, that protein is going to help replicate and rebuild healthier cells, thus a bigger picture of a healthier immunity. The second thing protein does is it acts like an Uber within the body. So there's tons of substances within the body, and they all have to be in different places to create different things. Right? There's a whole ecosystem going on in your body, and protein plays a role of like an Uber. Right? It transports certain substances to and from the body to where they need to go. So simply put, let's say in the bigger picture, that also helps with things like balancing out hormones or burning fat as fuel, right? Those are both systems in the body that have to have a lot of things take place, like moving one substance from one area to another. So protein is there to help transport those substances. So if you hear someone say, oh, eating protein will help balance out your hormones, that doesn't really make sense, right? Why does that work? It makes sense on a very small level of it will help transport the things that need to get from point A to point B to thus balance out your hormones. And the last one, which you might have noticed before, is protein will help create satiety. And satiety is just a fancy word of saying you're feeling full. So if you have a full meal of vegetables and maybe some starches, and you also have some meat in there, and you're going to be pretty full and happy towards the end of your meal, right? But have you ever ate a meal that's just vegetables or just fruit or just bread? It's not very filling, right? After a while, you're hungry even though you just ate. So protein is going to be a huge factor in helping you stay full. Those are just some of the things protein does in the body. Obviously, I'm trying to keep this fairly simple. All right, so moving on. The portion size, as I said, is 1 to 2 palm size per meal. And this practice is important because it's helping us learn the external cueing of, okay, I'm going to measure this out at every meal, and I'm going to learn how I feel eating this much protein. So your internal cues will also give good information. Like if you have 2 palm sizes of protein, on your plate, and you are eating nice and slow, and you're about 3/4 of the way done, and your body's like, nah, I feel kind of full, then you're full. You're done. You don't have to finish your plate. You don't have to stuff yourself. But it's not always easy to tap into those internal cues, which is why we're using hand portions. So with that said, right, this is not about perfection. You do not have to get out and measure every single line of your hand to make sure it fits, right? This is just a good guideline for us. So as always, the number one thing with changing your nutrition is changing your behavior. And by changing your behavior, you have to practice something every day. So everything I've gone through today is very interesting. It's very cool. It gives you good, insight on what protein does with the body. But by far, the most important thing is for you to apply your daily practice. So out of everything, make sure you are using your hands for 1 to 2 palms of protein per meal. All right, so last thing, we're going to go over just a couple types of proteins. We have our animal proteins, our plant proteins, and then I'll briefly touch on protein powders. But before I talk about animal proteins, I want to give my own personal disclaimer. I'm sure some of you have heard or seen in social media or from a trainer or a coworker that either animal proteins are really, really good for you or animal proteins are really, really bad for you. And it's usually one or the other. And, both sides in the scientific world have studies that back, their hypothesis that it's really good for you or it's really bad. And I like to take a spot right in the middle, saying that both can be very good for you within context. So each person is going to be very different. Each person is going to react very differently to different foods and different amount of foods. So with that said, if you are someone that eats animal proteins and you feel really good, you feel great when you eat them, by all means, continue eating them. If you're someone that chooses not to eat them because you just don't like them or they don't make you feel good, then by all means, you don't have to eat them at all. If you're in the middle and you say, I don't really know if I care or don't care for animal proteins, you can play around with it. Have some, don't have some, and just kind of notice and name how your body feels, and you can choose from there. Either way, if you're eating only plant-based proteins or a bunch of animal proteins, you can still have a fairly unhealthy diet, because a lot of types and qualities of food matter. But just in terms of like the good and the bad, I don't think that way, and I don't teach that way. I think everything is on a spectrum. So it's up to you. It should be unique to you, so you can kind of play around with how you feel. So for our animal protein types, we have eggs, dairy, any type of meats, fish, and poultry. For our plant proteins, there's a variety of plants that give us protein, and some more than others. We have plants that give us complete proteins and plants that give us incomplete proteins. And all that means is, do you remember a couple minutes ago when I talked about essential amino acids and non-essential? The ones that are essential are the ones we have to eat to be able to build and repair structures within the body. Most animal proteins will give us all of those essential amino acids, but not all plant proteins will give us all the essential amino acids we need. So sometimes you have to kind of mix and match and make sure you pair up certain plant proteins with other plant proteins so you have the full essential amino acids. If you go through your app on the resources area, there are tons of lessons and articles and visual aid guides that help you learn more about plant-based eating if you're interested in that, and how to mix and match those plant proteins to consume what you need. So if you're interested in that, obviously feel free to message me, but I highly recommend going through that, going through those lessons and those visual aids. And they're very clear, very concise, very simple, and they give us really good action steps that you can take to make sure you're ingesting all the essential amino acids you need. And lastly, there are protein powders. So pretty much everyone has heard of protein powders. There's always debate on whether you need them or not need them, or which type is best. And I have the same viewpoint. It's unique to everyone. So if you're someone that protein powders work well with your day-to-day logistics of food, then by all means keep eating them. If you're someone that never really used protein powders and you feel like you get enough protein in from more natural sources, then don't worry about forcing yourself to include protein powders. And if you're someone like me, I use them as needed. So they're a good supplement when I need them if I don't have enough protein in my daily diet. With powders, there's lots of different types. Ideally, the best types are the ones that are more pure. So think about a protein powder as like a pure shot of protein. And my best analogy is of coffee. So you can order a cup of coffee, or you can order an espresso shot. And that espresso shot is basically a small form of pure caffeine. And protein powder is no different. It's a smaller form, a supplemental form of pure protein that your body can ingest as it would any other type. So if you have more questions on that, like I said, feel free to look through the resources, or you can always message me. So as a recap, protein has a lot of jobs within the body. It's very needed. It's very important. There's a lot of different sources you can get from protein. They're very unique to everyone, but by far the most important thing is just your daily practice. So forget about brands, or forget about types of protein, or really, really specific details. What I care about most is just that you're practicing your 1 to 2 palmfuls per meal. So I hope this gave you a good overview of this practice, gave you some clear views on things and some additional resources you can check out. So if you ever have any questions, feel free to message me, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.